Jeeve, I'm Zara, I'm from Mayo, and I'm 19 years old. So growing up, I went to Mass every weekend with my grandparents, and it didn't mean much to me, and I just saw it as something that everybody does. Most summers we went to Knock, which is a Marian pilgrimage site in Mayo, and Knock is about like a 40-minute drive from my house. But my favourite part of going on this pilgrimage was always just getting ice cream on the way home. I usually went with my granny, and I always enjoyed going, but it was never personal or anything special to me, and I only really went for the sake of spending the time with my grandparents. Both my granny and granddad had a big role in my upbringing. Being the eldest of 6 meant that I loved the company of my grandparents, and I loved listening to the wisdom that they gently shared with me. So my parents and siblings are not practicing Catholics, so I never felt the pressure or saw any reason to take my faith seriously. And I just saw it as something that I'd focus more on when I was older. I remember making my first communion and confirmation, but it wasn't anything special for me, and I just saw it as something that was part of the school curriculum. All this time I was still attending Mass every Sunday with my grandparents, and I never denied that God existed, but I just wasn't able to believe that he was actually interested in me or my life. And I can remember being at Mass and hearing our parish priest talk about how God is like a loving father, and I can always rely on him, but this was something that I really struggled to believe. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad when I was growing up, so this influenced how I viewed God, and I viewed God as distant, and I struggled to believe that I was worthy of his love, and I thought that his love was something that I'd have to work really hard to earn. I would occasionally pray if things were going wrong, but to me, God was always this distant figure who was just up in the clouds doing his own thing. Going into secondary school, I was kind of seen as the religious girl, but this was just because my friends knew that I went to Mass, and for them this was seen as a very holy thing to do. I didn't really like this label, so when I was in 3rd year, around the age of 15, I stopped going to Mass consistently, because at this time my friends and my social life became a lot more of a priority to me, and I started to become more skeptical, and I questioned why I was even going to Mass in the first place. So when I was in transition year, so around the age of 16, I started drinking and partying in my friend's shed. These parties were really fun, and I always had a great time. However, they usually resulted in excessive drinking. And although I didn't have much faith at this stage, I always felt very guilty about this, and I was convicted about getting drunk with my friends and seeking fulfillment in that. And it was something that I never really felt super happy or fulfilled doing. So this was my lifestyle for a couple of months, but it wasn't fulfilling at all, and it led me to question my choices, and it got me thinking a lot more about what I really valued. And one of my friends, who is super into his faith, played a big role in this. We used to have discussions about politics and morality, and he really challenged me on what I truly valued. We had talks about God and his existence. And to be fair, most of these arguments for God's existence really did make good sense to me. But I really wanted to disprove my friend's opinion, so I started to research the faith for myself. So I began to read books that really challenged me to think deeper about what I valued, such as Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and lots of content from Jordan Peterson, which was really, really insightful and encouraged me to kind of look deeper into what I valued. I also watched debates for the faith, which were very convincing, and so at this point I started to realise that the Catholic faith was much more than just going to Mass on a Sunday and praying when things weren't going my way. But I was still quite sceptical about certain things within the Catholic Church, like the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist and praying to like saints and Our Lady. So in the summer of TY, my friend was told by his parish priest about a youth retreat that was coming up here in Holy Family Mission, and he invited me to come along. And so I still had many of my doubts, and I still had many arguments for the Catholic faith, but by the grace of God, somehow I agreed to go. So I went and I met lots of people my age who were just living out their faith and were actually normal. They had a very authentic and natural sense of joy and lightheartedness, which I really loved. I found some of them very inspiring, and it was at this retreat that I made a very honest confession after not having gone for years. And after this confession, I felt like a weight had really been lifted off my shoulders. We had adoration that night on the Saturday night of the retreat, and I had a really special encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist. And it was there for the first time that I really felt the love that God had for me personally. And I was just uncontrollably crying tears of joy. I just felt such an overwhelming sense of peace and of God's love and mercy. And it planted a really big seed for my faith, and it was a big turning point for my faith journey. And a lot of the doubts that I had about the faith were put at ease. So after this encounter of God's love, I knew that things would be much different, and I started taking my faith much seriously and returned to regular Mass every Sunday with my grandparents. And so my granny and granddad were very happy that I had taken my faith into my own hands. As for the rest of my family, they were a tad bit confused as to why I was suddenly this holy Joe. And my friends also shared in this confusion. However, they had this kind of like you do you attitude towards my faith. So they somewhat respected it. And although I loved God, I found it really hard to share that love with others because I had a huge fear of judgment and rejection from my friends. And I was scared that they would think that I wasn't fun anymore. So consequently, there was definitely times where I made little compromises about my faith and my morals just to prove myself to my friends or have a fear of judgment. However, God still managed to work through this by providing me with many opportunities to attend youth events such as U2000 retreats, and these played a massive role in me developing my faith and just going deeper into a personal relationship with Jesus. They really nurtured my faith, and through these retreats, God provided me with really beautiful chances to make Christ-centered friendships, which I'll be forever grateful for. At these retreats, I met some amazing groups such as the Home of the Mother, who are a religious order from Spain, and they really helped in forming and nurturing my faith. On one occasion, I had the opportunity to spend time with these sisters in Spain, and this trip really encouraged me to go deeper with God and to not be ashamed of my faith. And just getting to see the passion that these sisters had for Jesus and the love that they had for God and the love for one another was really, really inspiring for me. And it was just really beautiful to see the way that they lived their faith. And they helped me to realize that our faith shouldn't be built on our emotions alone, but on finding God in the everyday. The sisters had a vibrant sense of joy, and lots of them were very young, so I found it really, really easy to relate and to connect with them. So while I was in Spain, I remember reading a verse from the Gospel of Mark where it read, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" And so this really stuck with me because it just kind of clicked in my head, and it made me realize that I should only care how God sees me, and I should not let my friends' opinions influence how I live my life, and I should only care and look for God's approval. So then last year when I was in my Leaving Cert year, all my friends were applying to colleges, and I applied myself too, but I knew I hadn't a notion of going this year. So I knew that the Lord was calling me to take a year out where I'd go deeper with him and just to learn more about him. So I was certain that Holy Family Mission would be a safe place where I could come and grow to learn more about my faith, and so I could share it more confidently with others. And so here I am. These past few months have been really, really special to me, and they've really helped me to go deeper with God. Thank you for listening to my testimony, and thank you for your prayers and continuous support. God bless.